because we let them know we identified them as homeless. And some of them would call and say, what does this mean? And then once you explain it, they're okay. They're all right with that. But a lot of them, they just struggle to admit that, hey, I have children in my home that are considered homeless. And in this position, not only working with McKinney Vento, but also working with students that we contract with Truancy. We have a lot of students that are in very dynamic situations. They don't live with their parents. We have students that they're living with this person this week. They try to get apartments. They're living with somebody else next week. We have one student, she's not even with her parents, and they're trying to find places to live. It's awful. And you're like, they really don't have anywhere to live. And the saddest part is that you have adults that can't provide a home. It's just craziness. But I want you to when you see kids in your school that they need things and they're struggling, if you let me know, we can do food. We work with the schools. We have the food pantries. I am technically not allowed to buy food with my McKinney Vento money, which with food being such an issue, but I'm not allowed. I can buy personal hygiene items. I can buy clothes. I can buy school supplies. There's things that I can pay for with that money. So just contact me, let me know. I have 1 year. I told my husband this morning, I said, I think that within the next couple of days, I've been here 1 year, and then here March, we were sent out. And that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. All the cases I filed on in the spring, they've dismissed every one of them. I probably had 60-some secondary kids under contract that I was getting ready to file on. I probably had filed on 15 elementary parents, and I had probably 20-some kids I'd already filed and put in the court system, and they've dismissed all of them. So when school starts back, I don't know what that's going to look like. I have a meeting on the 11th, and I have a meeting on the 19th. Stacy Losh is over the attendance at the Department of Ed, and I have known her for a while. I'd worked with her through the literacy campaign, and just reimagining my role as the attendance director, and what can I do to help you guys? Can we, and the definition, and Dr. Bond and I talked about this yesterday, looking at our attendance policy once we're back in the building. How do we need to rewrite that? It says that to be absent, you have to be physically present in a building. I would like to rewrite that. I would like for it to, I want us to be able to count if they're supposed to be logging in virtually and they're not logging in, can we count them as absent? As a former teacher and principal, these kids are going to come back with, especially our elementary kids, our kindergarten, first, second grade kids, they're going to come back with such a gap. They're going to lose a lot of ground since March until now. And how can we look at academics, not just attendance? And how can my office, how can we help support that? To continue to reach out to parents, changing my contracts. I have the attendance contracts. We do that with secondary kids. We did so many of those in the spring because, they have the 10. They don't reach the 10 unexcused usually till January, February. So we had started doing all the contracts, had filed on some, and all that's gone. I don't have any of that to work with when school starts, which is going to all look different. So I'll know more when I meet with the State Department and what ends up happening with school. But I want to be able to work closely with the social workers and the counselors. I still want to be able to do SAT meetings. I still want to be able to come to your schools and call, and I'm more familiar with everything now, just the nuts and bolts of the way everything works. My mind has always been, I always say I'm a teacher. It just seems like I find myself in different positions. But this position, I've learned it's a different perspective. I did curriculum for a while, and now I'm in this position. So looking at my office, and how can we support you even more, because it's going to be really difficult to file for truancy. And we have a new prosecutor, and even speaking with him to talk to other prosecutors in the state, how are they going to file for truancy? And what do we need to do to be able to have some teeth on making sure that our kids, if they do the blended learning, they're coming those 2 days, they're logging on, they're completing their assignments, and holding them accountable. So that's just some things that are, kind of up in the air right now. I'm hoping to get some clarification. But I still want to work closely. I still want to have, if I have to do SAP meetings via phone, call the parents, but just making sure some of these kids it's just getting them to school was an issue. I can't imagine some of these parents having to educate them too. And that's going to be the biggest thing, is making sure that these parents stay on to them to get their work in. They'll say they want to do virtual, or they're going to do the blended or whatever, and then you've got kids. You meet with kids that are absent 20 days unexcused and they're failing 2 or 3 courses. We can contract them and say, hey, we're going to file truancy on you. But if I can't do that, which I hope they give me some leverage to be able to do that. But with your McKinney Vento, like I said, just send me those surveys when you send those out. That they come to me if you feel like they're identified homeless. If you want to write a note, or I may call you and say, hey, do you know anything about this family? Because I'm really trying to pull our numbers up, because I do feel like they're rock bottom compared to all other counties. We're not getting near the resources that we should. And I know, and I want to be honest about it. I'm not going to, but being doubled up, like I said, that's the biggest issue we have right now throughout the state. We have families, multi-families living together. A lot of kids living with grandparents. And I just really want to make sure that all of our kids are getting counted, and we're getting the funding and the resources that's available to us. One other thing I gave you, I put draft at the top. This was a huge issue for secondary. Is these kids that are in your buildings, they disappear, they move everywhere. What do we do with these kids? Do we drop them? Elementary is not so bad. And then this is just a draft. These are some things that they're throwing out there, because this is a problem all over the state. On the back, if you will, it talks about the special dropouts. And this was my goal this year, was to clean some of this stuff up. Because we have 18-year-olds that, they want to do virtual, or they're going to, and they're just hanging out there. And it drives me crazy when we put them on homebound, or we put them on virtual, and they're not logging in, they're not doing anything. They should have already graduated. They lack 2 or 3 credits, and we're trying to get them in here. We're begging them to come to school, and they're killing our attendance. Chronically absent will probably be a thing of the past this year. I don't know if they'll pick it back up next year, but I don't know how in the world they're going to even consider looking at chronically absent with kids being all over the place. So I haven't gotten any kind of word on what they're looking at with that, but I just think that would be I just think that would be crazy, and I will voice my opinion over that. I don't think that the schools at all should have to take a hit on chronically absent this year. I think that's absurd. There's no way that we're going to be able to monitor that. And then they want this accountability. That should not, I don't even know how they're going to monitor attendance, let alone, have that on your accountability piece. So, but this is just something they're looking at with kids that are a withdrawal process. When they come in, they go to another county. They don't, some of them will leave and go to another county. They maybe homeschool, and they don't contact the county that they've moved into that they're homeschooling, and we have them and nobody can find them. Nobody hears from them. So they're wanting to address some of those issues this year, and and it may be even worse. It may be harder to track kids this year. I don't know if you have them move out of your district and they go to another school, go virtual, or another county. I don't know what that's going to look like. But this is, just read through it. It's just a draft. If you have anything you want me to, when we meet on the 11th and we'll meet again on the 19th, if there's something else on here that you guys want me to address, or you feel like it's an issue here in Mason County that I can ask about, But we definitely need procedures for those kids that, they're 18 years old, they have 21, 22 credits, they didn't graduate, they come back in the fall, they want to do something, they want to do virtual, whatever, homebound, they're not being successful, they don't show back up. I mean, they're gone for 30 days, and then all of a sudden they show back up at the homebound center or somewhere. And we have a few of those. They're rare, but we do have a few. And on the back it talks about if they have not been in attendance in 10 consecutive days and have been referred for appropriate truancy proceedings, if I filed, then we can drop them. I know we don't want to do, we don't want to hit on the dropout rate, but I don't like having these kids on our roster. They're not at school, they're not coming. So that's just, and they keep coming up on our attendance reports, and then we stop taking attendance on them, and then I file truancy. It's just a mess. So there are some procedures they're looking at for kids that we just can't find or leave and are gone, and how can we, they're calling them proposed administrative withdrawal process. So it's just and these are our kids that just move around a lot. Do you guys have any questions for me? One thing I am worried about with attendance, just say that Corona, you have a kid that comes, a parent calls, my child has symptoms, and then the kid wants to come back to school tomorrow. I have an issue with that. I have an issue with a parent calling you saying, my kid's coughing this morning, they're showing symptoms of COVID, and then tomorrow that kid is on the bus and they're back in your building. That bothers me. So my question is, I wasn't in here yesterday at the health department, and I know we have to follow those guidelines, but just, are they going to be tested before they can come back? And do they have to be tested?
They don't have to be tested.
We can't force, we can't make them test.
Okay, then I don't think, this is my theory, then I don't think that if a parent chooses to keep them home because they have symptoms and they refuse to have them tested, then I don't think that we should give them an excuse. They should either come back with a doctor's excuse or a parent note, because I really feel like the State Department's going to give us an excuse for these kids that we send home for Corona, or they miss, their 10 days or 14 days or whatever, they've been exposed. But if a kid has symptoms and the parent refuses to have them tested, they send them back to school, then they should have to use their parent note or doctor's excuse. Because
if the
they're...
parent calls in and says, I suspect my child having that, the principal should not just say, you're out for 3 days.
Yeah, I think that's what the plan said, that they have to be symptom free for 3 days before they
Right, but my thing is, what kind of excuse are we going to use?
anything keep them out of school. I don't want back in school. They think
Right.
they got COVID, parents don't want to take my school.
Well, my problem, I just hate for them, they're going to leave them out for 3 days. You just worry about parents abusing that.
And they very well might, and that's the thing, it's going to be imperfect.
I mean, you're going to have kids out all the time. Parents are going to
Lots
say,
of moving parts to them.
yeah, I mean, my kid has symptoms, so I get 3 days off. You're going to excuse them.
So what you're saying is the state's putting in
We don't have a code, no,
Sure.
we don't have any direction yet at all. I mean, it's August. I've had 0 meetings over what attendance is going to look like. I have a Weavis meeting on the 11th, and then I have another meeting on the 19th. So I'll find out what direction. I'll get some better guidance on what they're wanting to do. And I understand the 3 days symptom-free or whatever, and we can excuse them, but we're just going to have kids missing all the time. My kid has a runny nose, so they get 3 days off school.
And see, that's the predicament we're in. If they have a fever and a symptom, it's most likely will be the flu, but we have to still send them home, and
I
they
know.
still have to be symptom free for 3 days before they come back. That's the request. That's the
And I'm afraid your offices and the nurses' stations are going to be revolving doors.
Every sniffle, they're going to be afraid to go.
Oh, yeah, everything. So, I mean, I'm hoping that we get some better guidance on that as far as excuses. I wish we would have had a meeting before now. I have no clue what they're going to do. I have no idea what stand the State Department, and maybe they were waiting so late just to see if we're actually going to be back in the buildings or what. I don't know, but nothing like last minute. So As soon as I get something, I will let you guys know what they're going to allow us to do. The big thing across the whole state is if they opt for virtual, they're not logging in, and they're not completing their assignments, can you mark them absent? And we may have to change our policy, because our policy and all other policies within the state says they have an absence that has to be physically present in your building to be marked, to be absent, that be physically absent from your building, not virtually or online. So that's going to have to change, because the prosecutors feel like we can't file truancy because they're technically not meeting.
Probably would change this too, if the health department orders a class to quarantine, but one kid is positive, that whole class has to quarantine with that teacher, then we would ideally switch them to remote or virtual for the 2 weeks.
Right, exactly.
So they're technically not missing school because then.
No, they're not, and they're excused either way. So they're going to be excused, but what do we do if they're not doing their stuff virtually? Parent
We
opts.
count them absent? Can we count them absent?
Well, that's my question.
Well,
Can we
I don't
count?
have internet access at home, then
So you'd have to have a policy first.
Yeah, we're going to have to change our
Have to have
policy.
the policy.
And no one has given me an answer on that. I had called her probably a month ago and asked her, and then like I said, we have a new prosecutor. Some of the other attendance directors, the prosecutors in the state are saying, according to the definition of what an absence is, you're not going to be able to file because they're not logging in virtually. But if we have to change our policy, then I'll change the policy to include virtual, and just have to work really closely we'll just have to have, people to monitor that. Are they logging in? Are they completing their assignments? Because if things go back to normal next year, and you have these kids that's lost pretty much a year and a half of instruction, then you've got then next year the dynamics of your challenge is different. You're going to have classes that are way behind.
So the kids without internet, could there be something in there that if, a student doesn't have internet and is not able to log in virtually, but able to make phone contact with their teachers, and that can count as an
And I may call some of you guys, we may try to discuss some of this just to see, because I would like to focus more on academics as well. If they're passing, if they're completing their assignments, they're logging in virtually, they're completing their assignments, they're showing progress, then they're meeting our standards, so that at least they're doing the work, and they're not going to come back and not at least be exposed to some of the curriculum. They are trying, but my issue is they opt for virtual and they're not doing anything.
Yeah, if they choose that virtual option, they can log in, I agree.
There is some kind of accountability that, we need to be able to say, hey, we pull it up, teacher pulls it up, whoever, this kid hasn't logged in 4 or 5 days. The assignments are not complete. If they opt for virtual, there's some sort of accountability that has to take place if we're going to make sure that kid is. So that's a question I have for them. If they choose virtual, they're not logging in, they're not completing assignments, can we mark them absent? And how do we do that? Do we need to change our policy? Will the state change their language in their attendance policy? We haven't done anything as far as last year. They changed some counties were doing 3 and 5 day letters. You guys did the 5-day letters. I sent one, you sent one from the school. The policy stated that after the 3rd day, we needed to make someone from the school, myself, needed to make meaningful contact with parents after the 3rd unexcused, via phone call, message, something, just to say, hey, they've had 3 unexcused. And at no time do I ever care. If you have a kid that you're worried about or something's going on, please call me, email me. Some of these kids are very hard to track. If they're moving, you can't hardly find them. When I taught pre-K, I used to do home visits in Logan County, so it was crazy trying to do home visits there. But here, we've been on some adventures too, trying to locate families and kids, and That's one thing they're gonna still push for us to do, just like the administrative withdrawals. I mean, I have to show, according to this, if this is picked up, we have to show that we've tried to do a home visit. I mean, we've tried, we have done everything we could from our end to try to locate these kids. DHHR, truancy, and then we can withdraw them. But, we have to show that we've covered ourselves and tried to. And then there's kids that I filed on that you sit and you worry so much about, and you just pray they show back up and they're okay. And that's one thing and there's a few that I wanted to get in my car and just drive and find them, knock on their door, but they're not going to be too receptive to me considering school's out. So I think I had one parent, when we were in magistrate court, this mom has already been arrested. She has 3 or 4 kids, and I filed, it's elementary, this kid I'm filing on is elementary, and the magistrate says, Ms. Farmer, when you refile this, you file this as the 9th offense. And you're like, and we do not, as a county as a whole, when I look at our data, Mason County as a whole does not have an attendance problem. You have a core group of parents that you file on every single year. That is our attendance problem.
Exactly right.
We are trying to address the whole county, and if we pull our data, we probably have 50 to 100 kids that kill our attendance every single year. It's not new kids showing up. Last year, I was like, wow, and then as I started looking on kids that I needed to file, the ones that Doug had filed on the year before, they were doing pretty good because they're already in the court system. But the ones that I needed to file on again, they just got off, some of them just got off probation, like when school went out last year. And then you're contracting, we pull these kids and they're like, oh yeah, I was under contract last year. And you're like, I mean, it's just the same stuff. We're contracting the same kids year after year. And then magistrate with elementary, you're filing on the same parents year after year. So it's not a new group of kids. It's like the same families. So that was my goal this year, but is to pull those parents out, those families, those kids, identify those that are killing us year after year, and target that group of people. Instead of, we have to address attendance for all kids, but we have a group of parents, a group of families that just destroy the attendance here, and it's like that in every county. That was that group of people was going to be my focus this year, looking at maybe somehow we could do workshops with them, bringing them in, drawing attention to that, to where maybe they have a little bit more incentive to get their kids up, get them to school. They have a 4th grader that you file on, and they've got 2 kids in high school that's already, you're like, this is just a vicious cycle. And that's the only way the attendance is going to get better, is to target that group of people that are, and then your chronically absent rates will look a lot different if you can address that group of people. But again, I don't know what this year is going to look like. Nothing like we've ever dealt with before. So my big thing is, as from my office, I want to be able to hold these kids that are opting for virtual, hold them accountable for logging in, completing assignments, doing their work. And then, so if there's anything you guys need from me, just please let me know. Good luck.